When I came out earlier, I was remiss in forgetting to thank our sponsors, which are on the screen, AT&T, Herman Miller, our gold sponsors, AT&T, Herman Miller, and ADA Ireland. It is now my pleasure to welcome on stage Fortune Magazine Assistant Managing Editor Stephanie Mehta, who will interview AT&T Chairman and CEO Randall Stephenson.
Thank you, Adam. And Randall, thank you so much for being with us here this morning. It has been a very busy week for AT&T. This week you announced a deal with Plastic Logic to provide electronic readers, and also you announced earnings today. And I want to get to both of those things in just a moment. But I wanted to start out by asking you, a lot of your employees really blanch at being referred to as the phone company.
I do too.
And as do you. And as your earnings pointed out, you guys are increasingly dependent on your wireless business. One could say that your main business is transporting information and data across your networks, but that's not all you do. How do you, and no jargon please, define AT&T? How do you describe the company today?
Define jargon. What can I say?
No jargon.
Well, we're in the connectivity business. And I kind of summarize it, and internally we talk about it this way. We just make things go faster. We make business go faster. We make commerce go faster. That's at the core, that's what we do as a company. And you think about commerce, and the basic driver of commerce is connection, right? You have to connect people to create markets and to create economic growth. And you go back in history, that was always at crossroads. That's where people connected and commerce ensued. And then technology like roads and airports and railways caused commerce to go faster. Telecom has taken commercial velocity to levels that we haven't seen in literally human history before. And that's at the core what we're trying to do, make commerce go faster.
By virtue of your size, and I think this is true, every single Fortune 500 company is a customer of AT&T's in some capacity. That really puts you at the center of a lot of these relationships. At the same time, we're entering a period whereby you also compete with a lot of your customers. A lot of the companies that you supply connectivity to also want to get into your businesses. Google's a great example of that. How do you manage those relationships when you're both competing as well as partnering?
You got to be very direct and straightforward and establish the relationships up front. We have a lot of these situations. The classic example is probably Cisco. There are places in the market where we do not intersect. Our capabilities and our competencies do not intersect. And we're complementary to each other. Telepresence is a classic case. The telepresence solution is a great technology, needs a lot of connectivity, needs a lot of managed bandwidth. It just makes perfect sense for us to partner there. But you go to other places like web conferencing. John Chambers and I agree. We compete in that space, and we will compete very aggressively in that space, and we establish those up front. And so we meet each other in the marketplace in some areas, we partner and work together in others.
You once told this great anecdote about Carlos Slim, for whom you worked, about the fact that you were once in a meeting together and he pulled out this piece of paper and he just kept unfolding it and unfolding it and unfolding it. And on this piece of paper was the name of every major telecommunications company in the world and all kinds of financial metrics. And that was his way of ordering his ecosystem. Do you have a similar system for keeping track of your partners, competitors, potential acquisitions?
Yeah, of course. In fact, I was with Carlos a couple of weeks ago, and for the first time in my life working with him, he was envious of something I had. And that is, he pulled his sheet out, and we're looking at some numbers. I said, that's dated. And I pulled out my iPhone. I have an app on my iPhone, and it's basically, I stole his sheet. But it's in the form of an app, and it's updated daily with stock prices, debt prices, and so forth. And he was so jealous. It was really a delight.
But he doesn't use an iPhone. I think he barely knows how to
No,
text?
he's a heavy BlackBerry user. Very, very heavy BlackBerry user. And in fact, a lot of these guys of that genre, we were back here, Ed Whitaker sending me text messages about my results today, or our results today. And Carlos, he's become a very heavy text user. But the way I frame our ecosystem is probably a little different. Carlos is not just in telecom, he's in all kinds of industries and so forth. And so he's viewing the world much differently than I would. Our ecosystem kind of centers around something we've quietly built over the last 3 years, and that's this massive IP backbone. And it's a one of a kind in the world. It's a 40 gig capability, and it's just a huge internet protocol superhighway. And so our entire world, everything we do, product development, customer relationships, and so forth, is about putting on-ramps onto this superhighway. So the iPhone is a classic case of it's an IP-based on-ramp onto this massive IP infrastructure. Think about the IPTV product that we developed, working with Microsoft. We spent a lot of time taking a different route to delivering TV. We wanted it to be internet-based television. Why? Because now all those televisions that sit in people's living rooms are on-ramps to this IP infrastructure. It's internet-based technology. And so you can keep going. Telepresence, working with Cisco. That is an IP-based on-ramp onto this infrastructure. Hosting, data centers, and so forth are exactly those kind of things. All of these startups that we talked about last night, every single one of them that we heard get up there and speak at dinner last night, were basically developing on-ramps to this IP infrastructure. And that's kind of the ecosystem that I follow and try to keep track of.
For any of the software developers out there, if you want to use the BlackBerry APIs to develop an app for Carlos Slim, he's got some spare change. He might buy that, right?
He's got an extra $1 or $2.
So let's talk a little bit about Apple. Are you at AT&T completely satisfied with the nature of your relationship with Apple and the iPhone?
I don't know. I don't think I could get my wife to say that about me, so I probably couldn't say that about a business partner. But no, every relationship, there are areas you'd like to see arranged differently. But if you step back from it and say a relationship of this importance to both sides, on balance, I think it works really, really well. Maybe as well as any key strategic relationship that we have. And so, yeah, there's some areas you'd love to tweak, but on balance, it's a...
Such as?
I'd like to pay less for the handset. Go figure, right?
Right, and on your earnings call today, there was reference to the fact that the launch of the new 3GS phone has increased expenses and then lowered margins. Is that a one-time event, and do the benefits of having the device outweigh the earnings hit?
Oh yeah, look, it's an investment. You subsidize these handsets with the expectation that you're going to get a customer that is, number one, a very high-end customer. It is a customer whose ARPUs tend to be much higher than the average, whose churn rates, they don't churn off the network, whose behavioral characteristics are the behavioral characteristics you want as a customer. And so, yeah, you make an investment. Last year, it was about 20 cents a share dilution. That's a pre-tax, about a $2 billion investment in this product. And you make that investment because of the customer that you're gaining with the product. So we're very pleased with the product.
Do you envision a scenario anytime in the future where Apple becomes a frenemy, much the way Cisco is both a customer as well as a competitor?
Well, of course. That's just the nature of the industry we're in. The lines really begin to blur as you begin deploying these IP-based services across these networks and so forth. I walk into my house and my wife will be sitting with her Mac laptop open, having a video conference with my daughter who's away at college. I look at that and say, that's a service we can provide, right? She's using an Apple service. So yeah, of course, there'll be areas where we compete with Apple.
So I want to do a quick speed round where we mention a couple of the companies that are your partners or competitors today. And tell me, 5 years from now, do you think they'll be friend, foe, or both? We'll start with Cisco. Friend, foe, or both?
Can we say partner, competitor, or both?
Partner, competitor, or both.
Cisco will be both.
IBM.
Be both.
HP.
Both.
Comcast.
Competitor.
Verizon.
Competitor.
Apple,
Both.
Microsoft.
Very much so, both.
Fair enough. Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned Uverse, which is your video service. You guys provide, as you say, this incredible IP connectivity. Why bother building a set of programming to run on that network? You know, there's a school of thought that says all this stuff goes to the web anyway. Why not just build a really great platform for people to access that information via their digital devices, as opposed to the huge expense, and you guys don't get the best rates necessarily in the industry, of assembling program and essentially becoming a cable company? What was the rationale?
Our view, expectation, if you will, of the market is over the next 5+ years, there is still going to be a high demand for your normal basic linear programming, real-time programming. So people are going to want to watch ESPN, CNN, Fox News, MTV. They're going to want to watch that programming live. They're going to want to watch it in a very high quality fashion, real time, which means managed bandwidth. And so if you really believe that, then you have to deliver that product to market. And that is, the product that you're talking about. Now, we're kind of in a unique position here, and that is we're not wed to one model or the other. And I'll be frank, it would not be the end of the world to me to see, we call it over-the-top video, to see an over-the-top video capability mushroom and become the predominant solution in the marketplace. If so, we have 1.6 million customers. It's growing rapidly, but for us to turn and to adapt to a model like that, it would not be very difficult, and in fact would probably be a better equation for a company like AT&T. So we're kind of in a good situation from that standpoint. And if the market does evolve to an over-the-top model, I think we're positioned to play well there. I just put Steve Jobs' Apple TV in my home, and it really causes you to pause, right? I mean, you think about all of a sudden now distributed around your home is all of your music, is all of your content, all of your pictures, and you have access to a great library of content in all of these devices. Well, I kind of like that model, and that suits well with us. You can bring it to a wireless device, you can bring it to the TV, to the computer. It's just a very nice platform for us. It works well with us.
And what happens to all the sunk cost associated with the IPTV rollout and, with building an infrastructure, relationships with set-top box manufacturers? If things do go all over the top, have you wasted the money that you invested in the first version of Uverse?
No, I mean, I fundamentally believe, whether it is a full array of linear programming 6-7 years from now, or video on demand for, Saturday's game. I'm an Oklahoma football fan. I want to watch video on demand OU football on Saturday. It still requires that same delivery mechanism. And so that infrastructure will be utilized under any of the various scenarios that we've discussed here.
Right. We're going to open it up to questions in a few minutes, so don't hesitate to send us questions using SpotMe or to raise your hand. But a few final questions from here. You talk a little bit about the deal with Plastic Logic. And let me ask you first, did you guys get a look at Kindle before they announced their deal with Sprint to do the WhisperNet? Were you able to look at the device before they did that deal?
Yeah, we had some folks in the organization look at it, and I'll make a confession here. I bought one of the first devices out and fell in love with it, and I'm an avid Kindle user. I think it's really an important technology.
Was it the one that got away?
Perhaps. Time will tell, right? You don't want to let the next one get away, though, right? And the e-reader it's not really, or the e-logic or the Plastic Logic device is not what I'd call an e-reader. It's going to have other utilizations and business application and so forth. But those types of devices and those types of capabilities leveraging these mobile broadband networks are going to be very important in the future, and we're going to be very aggressive at pursuing those opportunities.
Do we have any questions from the audience for Randall? Right here.
Hi, I'm Gina Keating with Reuters, and my colleague who covers your company was on the analyst call this morning and said that some of the analysts construed a comment that your CFO made that he hopes investors find comfort in AT&T's ability to maintain the customer base of iPhone even if you don't have an exclusive handset deal with them, as sort of a trial balloon that perhaps you wouldn't have exclusivity going forward. Can you give us any idea of how the talks are going to renegotiate that exclusivity deal, and also, if that's what he was meaning, that perhaps, in the near future you would not have an exclusive handset deal with them?
I didn't hear the exact comment he made or quote. My guess is if you think about our business, having an exclusive of the iPhone into perpetuity is not going to happen. There will be a day when you're not exclusive with the iPhone. I suspect that would serve Apple's interests and probably ours at some point into the future. But we haven't given any indication as to where we're going with that, and we haven't even discussed the term of the exclusive arrangement, and we've made an agreement to keep those confidential.
We have a question here.
Hi, Juan Hernandez with the Organization for Hispanic Advancement. With regard to voice over IP, I'm very interested in how technology is being used now by immigrants living in the United States, calling home from New York to Puebla, using Skype and setting up their web pages of what's going on with the grandma in Mexico and how they're doing up here. Verizon had for a while called the North American plan, so you could call free in quotation marks to Mexico, Canada, the United States. Where are we going with all of this, and what opportunities are there going to be for the long distance calling and national calling using voice over IP?
Well, we have, I don't know how many devices we're selling now that you can load a Skype client on and use it today. And if that level of service quality is good and it works for a customer in terms of saving money, then we have a whole lot of handsets that will accommodate a Skype client. Even the iPhone, if you're on Wi-Fi, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you can even use it on a Wi-Fi arrangement. We're just trying to get our hands around the volumes we're seeing on the network right now. But I think you're going to see those kind of clients evolve over time and be loaded onto wireless handsets. I think it's kind of natural that you would expect that. I think it's going to be a while before you see the service quality a level that's acceptable for a broad array of customers. So, as time goes on, perhaps that gets better. But in the interim, I don't see it as a huge item in terms of customers using that to displace traditional voice. But time will tell. It'll grow. It did on the wireline side. I see no reason why it won't on the wireless side.
Right. I know there's a question over here, but I just wanted to, as a follow-up, Randall, something you said sparked my interest. The telecommunications industry in this country has become considerably more open in the last 5 years than it was in the previous 120 preceding it. And I know there are a lot of people in this audience who would say it's still not open enough. But what changed, and were you guys wrong before, or are you just keeping up with the technology? I mean, things like allowing a Skype application on an iPhone or any kind of AT&T device was something you wouldn't have done 5 years ago. Opening up your APIs to your network, which is something Ralph de la Vega has talked about, wouldn't have even been under consideration 5 years ago. What's the changing? Are you being pushed by your vendors like the Apples of the world? No,
I mean, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, in the first part of the equation. You've built this large IP infrastructure. And it's really a large-scale IP infrastructure. Now the business model is connect as many devices to that as you possibly can. And last count we did, there are over 1 billion devices, whether they be cell phones, whether they be devices that are just wireless devices hooked up to home monitoring services, ATM machines, gas pumps, all of these devices hooked up to this IP backbone. Now the technology matures as well. I mean, what we're learning when Ralph talks about APIs, you put out very specific guidelines on what's required now to connect into this infrastructure. If you don't control that, then your experience on this network becomes very poor. And we're experiencing some of this now. Some applications are being connected to the network that aren't designed exactly right, and they start to create major problems in how the network behaves. So we're way out in front on this thing. We're making this thing as open as we can, while at the same time preserving the customer experience And I think over time it will continue to get more and more open as we learn how to manage the networks this way.
Rafat?
Yeah. Hi, are you aware of the rising number of complaints on your network? The fact that the network has gone from bad to worse in the last, I don't know, since iPhone launched. If you search on Twitter, you'll see a lot of complaints against AT&T for the network. My visual voicemail was down for 2 weeks, and that's not just me. That's half of the people here in the audience will say that. So I'm just curious what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean, we've experienced some network congestion in a lot of markets, and it does tend to center around where the iPhone penetrations have been the highest. We have undertaken a lot of initiatives. We're spending a whole lot of money, billions of dollars, literally, in enhancing our 3G capabilities and our coverage. A classic example being New York. To oversimplify here, we operate in a few bands of spectrum. We have the really high frequency band, which is where we deployed our 3G networks originally. Then we have a low frequency band, the really high quality stuff, which penetrates buildings and so forth. We're in the process of clearing out this low frequency band and moving all of our 3G traffic down into the high quality spectrum because of the volumes that we're experiencing from iPhones and other integrated devices. What we see when we do that, service quality jumps. The experience inside buildings, in tunnels, under bridges, dramatically improves. And there are a lot of markets where we're seeing that improvement really escalate very quickly. And we're investing really, really fast to stay ahead of the curve of the demand. But the demand, as a result of this openness that we just talked about here, you throw these things open to these kind of applications and services, the demand really spikes. And it's impressive what we're seeing happen with demand. And we're staying ahead of it. We're investing aggressively. It's requiring a lot of capital, a lot of dollars, being very astute in terms of how we engineer these networks, which is changing how we think about it. There's really, quite frankly, nobody else in the world experiencing what we're experiencing right now with the volumes of traffic going over these third generation networks.
What's an acceptable level of this consumer complaints or the data? Because I mean, literally, it's hard for us on the other side as consumers to not blame AT&T for all of this, and we appreciate the fact that, of course, you're putting a lot of money in it. But at the end of the day, if I'm missing important voicemails and my business is getting affected, I mean, how does that?
It's a big deal. It's a real important deal. I mean, you guys, all of us, rely on these services for our day-to-day activities, not only our businesses, but our home life, our personal life. So that's a big deal. In fact, I was personally involved in this voicemail issue that came up and became aware of it, about a week ago. And, at the end of the day, it's about 40,000 customers out of, millions that are on the product. It's not acceptable. Got to get after it, and you diagnose it, you do root cause, and you get it fixed. But it's just, it's a high priority for us. At the end of the day, you're only going to win in this business if your network quality is the best. That is our objective, to be the very best on speed, reliability, and dependability.
Okay, we've got time for just one more question. This gentleman in the front row.
Picking up off of what you just said, well, I'm sure we all appreciate what you're saying, but you're losing customers now. I was a Verizon customer for 7 years. I've been an Apple, AT&T iPhone customer since it came out. I'm also a tech reporter, but I don't recommend people buy the iPhone because of the AT&T service. So while everything you're saying is relevant and certainly good, I would argue that you're losing customers in the meantime. What do you say to those folks that I'm saying, hey, don't buy an iPhone, it's not ready yet because of the service? The gadget itself seems to do the trick, but how do you answer that question?
I'd say a lot of it's a function of where you are. I don't think there's a carrier out there that doesn't have areas where the network quality isn't struggling to a certain degree. Those areas where we have it, we're attacking it very, very aggressively. It is #1 priority in our business. And if you look at the results, which we measure by how is the churn in the business, there's no greater driver of churn in our business than network quality. We posted results this morning, and we had the lowest churn that we've had in the history of our company. And so churn results are getting better. I know you're having experiences that you're not. But regardless of what contract you signed, your greatest driver of churn is network quality. And churn is the lowest that it's been in the history of the company. So It's not fixed. We know we got a lot of room to go. We're investing a lot of money to make it happen. We're being very aggressive with it, and we'll make progress. We'll get there. We're getting there in a lot of markets, a lot of big markets. I was in New York and Boston. Those markets have really turned the corner and are performing very, very well.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time for this session. I'd just like to thank Randall one more time for joining us here at Brainstorm, and to let everybody know that we are about to go into a short 20-minute break. I'm also asked to remind you to please respond to the surveys that are showing up on your SpotMe device. We want to make the event as great as possible, and we really need your feedback, so please respond. And join me in thanking Randall Stephenson.
Thanks, Jeff.